Hello out there, and today we have the 10 things that you need to know about American Blade Works and their Model 1 V4. And it's actually not their Model 1 V4, it's his, and that leads me right into number one, which is One Man Gang. So American Blade Works, if you're not familiar with them, is a one-person operation where everything to do with this knife, with the exception of the screws, is put together, assembled, manufactured, made, all that good stuff by one person in North Carolina. And so the heat treat for this S35VN blade is done, the scales are made, every single aspect of this knife is done by one person, with the exception of, I said, the screws, which are purchased, but those are also made in America from an American producer. So every piece you see on this knife is from the USA, which is definitely a cool thing. But even cooler, in my opinion, is the fact that you have one person who is involved in every single aspect, and not just involved, but owning every little detail on this knife. So very cool that when you get anything from American Blade Works, that is the situation. All right, getting into number two, what we have is a design that I consider to be a timeless design. This is a knife model and a look of a knife that I think will be applicable and relevant forever. If you think about things that you can compare it to, stuff like, at least in my opinion, sort of similar, maybe larger than, but like the Mass Drop Gent and stuff like the Civivi Elementum, this is just a very agreeable knife design for almost anybody who's looking at it. You know, just a good EDC kind of folder, a good knife if you're a collector, but also if you're looking for just a one knife kind of thing for your everyday use. This is the one knife that you need to have. This is a great one. And so no matter what year, what day, like this is going to be just a model with these nice lines. You know, nothing really crazy and out of the ordinary, but it's always going to be an appealing knife to a lot of people. All right. Getting into number three. So what we have is constant evolution on this model, and that's a very cool thing. So this is version 4. Versions 1 through 3 were different. They were not maybe quite so refined, but as things continue to go, you know, improvements continue to be made. I think the previous incarnations, there were some aluminum scales. The V4 as of now just has G10, micarta, and carbon fiber, and we'll talk about that more in just a bit as well. But it's just always something that the maker is tweaking. So we're getting the CQI that we talk about with Spyderco. We're getting that all the time as more versions come out. And the thing that's really neat about it is, again, you're dealing with a one-person kind of company. So any kind of refinements or any kind of tweaks that need to be done to any specific model that you have can be done by him, which is super, super cool. You know, in the conversations that I've had just going back and forth trying to get more information about this model, you know, the things that that are in development in order to sort of take this one to the next level, maybe for the V5 or for future V4s, is just some work and like cutting more weight, some work on the clip, and then some stuff with the flipper. And we'll talk about all that in more detail a little bit later. All right, getting into number 4. Common process, exceptionally done. All right, and what I'm talking about here is the bead blast. So this is a blasted finish, and I'm gonna have to actually try to reach in the drawer and grab out like a Kershaw or something. And maybe you're not gonna be able to see the detail of this. Oh, actually, this is pretty good. The detail of this finish, this is a beautiful blasted finish. And I know that it's one, and again, just in the conversations back and forth as I tried to learn about this model from the one from the maker that maybe he's still trying to work on and do some new things with, but I think it's fantastic. I think it gives it its own identity because the bead blasts and the blasted finishes that you get on production knives more often than not, and let me see if I can, yeah. So, I mean, they look good, but I don't know. I mean, it's just sort of common. It's a common kind of look that you're used to. And when I think about knives that are available and out there right now, this is not a blade finish that I see very often, that's for sure. And the other thing that's cool when we're talking about the blade finish is that this is a very sterile blade with no laser markings, but we do have like stamp into the blade of the steel S35VN. So very cool. And again, one man gang. So the heat treat for this steel is done by him as well. So super, super neat. All right, getting into number 5, common materials done exceptionally well. And that is this G10. Everybody nowadays is all about micarta. And I understand that. Micarta, carbon fiber, you want like the high-end materials. And sure, I'm sort of one of those guys who's just not that I don't like micarta, but I just think it's sort of overdone. And I think a lot of it all looks the same. The micarta models that they have for this look pretty darn good. So definitely check out American Blade Works website, and I'll link to it down below if you want to see more of the stuff that is available. But this G10, what we're getting to, is exceptional. I mean, I had a number of times where I was looking at it and I wasn't sure that it was G10 just because of the way that it looked and the way that it felt. And I mean, even now, I still sort of doubt myself, even though it's G10. But yeah, it looks absolutely fantastic. It has this, again, its own unique kind of character as far as like the design and the lines go, and it just takes it to a level that I think, same thing with the Bead Blast, that yeah, you look at it on paper, G10, the blasted finish, yada yada, it just doesn't seem as appealing as when you get it in hand and you're like, no, this is different. This isn't a G10 that you would get from a CRKT or a Kershaw usually. This is something like that has a little bit more time put into it, or it's just finished in a way that it just looks like it is next level kind of G10. And Spyderco has done some very exceptional stuff with G10 as far as like the peel ply things, and we've seen what we can really do with that material. And I think this is just another example of that when people sort of hate on a material, they might just be hating on the example that they're getting, and they're not really seeing it at its fullest potential, which is really what this is. Now, that said, again, there is a micarta version out there, a few different colors as well, and those run the same price as the G10. But just for my money and for what this thing is, it's pretty fantastic with the G10 as it is. All right, number 6. Number 6 is inset liners and weight, and this is just sort of a fun little aspect of the knife that when I picked it up for the first time, I was looking at it, and I mean, it was really hard to tell that there were any liners inset in this knife at all. Obviously you could tell that you have the liner lock, sure, but I mean, it's just done so nice and flush and nested very beautifully that it's something that you don't even really see. So again, it's just a very clean look with those liners, and it was something that, yeah, impressed me right from the get-go, and so that's why it has its own number in this video. The weight of this knife, 3.5 ounces, which for a liner lock G10, for the size that it is, definitely not a bad thing. We're talking about almost 8 inches in overall length. All right, getting into number 7. So number 7 here is about lockup. So the only iffy thing that I experienced with this knife at all is just a tiny little bit of movement in the lockup. Now, the liner here is a titanium liner. So this is a titanium lockup. And in my experience, and this is with Benchmades, this is with just about any other titanium liner lock that I've ever seen, there's usually a little bit of movement, usually a little bit more than what I see here. Now, the other people who I've been in touch with who have other versions, and I've talked to about this knife, nobody has ever noticed any kind of movement besides me. So maybe I'm just a little bit sensitive to that. Maybe I've got the only one that's like that. But like I said, for me, this is something that when I was informed that this was a titanium liner lock, I was expecting there to be some measure of movement. Now, that said, I don't know that is the expectation from the maker, so it's definitely something to follow up on. But again, it's so minor that a lot of people probably won't even notice it, but it is something that I noticed. Number 8, let's circle back and talk about room for improvement. Like, what things with this knife could be done better? The things that I really saw jump out at me, the first one is the clip. So I like the look of it. I really like how clean it is in that the assembly screw for it is on the interior of the knife. So you have that like really clean look. It is not the easiest knife to get in and out of the pocket. It's clean, it carries well, but yeah, it is just a little bit snug here. And so it is not easy to slide in, and sometimes depending on how it sits in the pocket, it's not easy to pull out. So definitely something that I know is being worked on for future releases. So that is pretty cool. The other things that were mentioned to me as far as like cutting weight in the back and then the flipper, I had no problems with that. So I mean, maybe dialing in action possibly a little bit better, but that's being nitpicky. You know, as far as this knife goes, it's a pretty darn clean design, and everything that I think that is going to be needed for improvement is just going to be very minor fine tuning as things go forward. All right, number 9, value, near custom value. And let me not correct myself, but let me amend the statement. So this isn't necessarily a custom knife the way that you'll see, you know, $3,000-$4,000 knives from these like crazy, I don't know, designers who do stuff handmade. It's not necessarily something like that, but it's really not that different. And the lines are so blurred these days with what's custom and what's not. When I think about a company that's essentially one man who's basically making and taking every aspect of the creation of this knife on his own, you know, with no help. I mean, he's the one who blasted the blade. He's the one who did the heat treat. He's the one who made the scales. He's the one who assembled it. He's the one who designed it. He's the one who made the clip. You know, every single little tiny piece of this knife coming together was done by one person. For me, there's a shit ton of value there. A lot. I think that's super cool. And I think that, you know, the financial kind of aspect with these being $185 for the G10 or the micarta, $235 for the carbon fiber, I think that the value, while maybe it might not be, I don't know, it might not be the nicest, flashiest knife, I think the money that they're asking for is ridiculously reasonable, because you have a piece that is, you know, hand assembled and under the care of one person. I mean, how often can you say that? And how does that make that so different from a lot of the knife people who call themselves custom makers? Again, I'm not trying to call anybody out. I'm not trying to say what is one category and what isn't. I don't care about any of that stuff. What I care about is that I know that there is one person who's working his ass off to make a great product as hard as he can, and is putting everything he has into it, and he's charging a price that is competitive with some of the major manufacturers that are outsourcing these things and have people who are getting paid $12 an hour to put the knives together. You know what I mean? So I think a whole heck of a lot of the value that I see in this knife is there. That said, as just a knife, competitive with other things in the $185 range, yeah, I think it is. You know, I think it definitely is. I think it's got some unique aspects that set it apart that make it appealing for that reason. I think that the variety and the fact that you have a lot of different options makes it a little bit more like customizable as far as that goes. So, you know, you're not just getting a black knife with a satin blade. You have, you know, your choices of handle materials and stuff. So, you know, maybe you'd pay a little bit extra for stuff like that. There's a lot of things that go into making this a very high value knife, even at the price point. And I think the fact that this is just continually going to improve and evolve adds to that as well. So finally, getting into number 10, recommendation. Do I recommend this knife? Yeah, I really do. I think it's a really awesome thing. More than anything, the thing that I'm drawn to so often with knives is the process. I like learning about the process. When I talk about like Kershaw knives to the people at Kershaw, like I want to know, like, what were the problems in producing this? Like, how did this go? Who does this? Like, how does this come together? Like the whole how it's made thing is very interesting to me. And the fact that this is made by one person, I'll say it over and over again, it just means a whole hell of a lot to me. And I sort of have the feeling, what I think about when I look at American Blade Works and the things that they're doing and the potential that this knife has to take off with the timeless kind of shape and lines of the knife. This could be like the next North Arm Skaha, where there's, you know, year-long waiting list to get these things. And I think that it is definitely worth that comparison. Definitely worth that comparison. I've never owned a Skaha. I've handled one. I think that this potential here 3-4 years down the road, if that, is that this could be just as popular a platform as that. And that says a lot. All right, guys, so that's my take on it. Any questions, comments, complaints, suggestions, let me know down below. I really appreciate you watching. Thanks again. Take care and have a good one.